Hey there, guys. Got another question. Percentage based versus RPE. Look, it comes down to the lifter and their skill level. Typically, RPE, I try and leave that for athletes that have been competing for a while, understand what it's like to really push, and have a good idea about their body as well as how close they may be coming to an exercise with technique breakdown in mind, or if they had an underlying injury, um, they can sort of gauge how close they are to aggravating something. So I prefer RPE based for stronger and more experienced athletes. I also use it for individuals that know how to push, but they're smart enough to leave a few reps in the tank. Versus percentage based. Some athletes don't like to push hard. They don't like to work hard. So using a percentage base sort of forces them to work in a zone which is optimal for success, but also it might feel a bit hard for them, but I'm never going to program anything ridiculous. Um, Also, for some of your big compound movements, I just prefer to stick to percentages. You'll have some days where you feel really good and you want to push a bit harder, get a few more reps. But if you're sticking to percentages and sticking to set reps and things like that, sets and reps, I find it's a very useful tool so you don't overly tax the body. And then the flip side, you'll have some days where you just have no motivation, feel so flat, and you don't want to train. And if you're using RPE, you'd probably go a lot lighter versus, if you're stuck with a percentage, it's a really good way of keeping yourself accountable. For me personally, I use squats and bench as more percentage. That way, I don't overtax the body on days that I feel a little bit, flat and not really that motivated. I know exactly what I have to do. I don't have to think about it. How I feel is completely irrelevant. I just go in and get the work done. Now, when it comes to assistant exercises, I'm happy to use RPE because I might make the break times 2 minutes or 3 minutes, so all of that will skew how it feels. If you have very very short break times, using percentages isn't going to work well because you've got too much lactic acid in your system and you're just going to miss a bunch of reps. Versus I'd rather use RPE for those because with the assistant exercises, their primary focus or goal, I should say, is to bring up my main lifts. I'm not interested really in bodybuilding side of things. I'm just interested in strength performance. So everything that I do is based around that or injury prevention. A little bit of prehab is worth so much more than getting injured. Another example would be like the tire flips yesterday. New to the movement, haven't really practiced it. It's an assistant exercise, and the reason I'm doing it is to help strengthen my lower back and core, simply because that's going to carry over better to squats and deadlifts. Also, similar to stones, picking something up from a dead start and lifting it up and then putting it down. I find it taxes the lower back really well, but not in a sense that where I have to grind out a rep. Like I can sort of muscle out the reps on stones, and same to an extent with the tire. Versus, if I got the deadlift bar against my shins, everything's, working perfectly. It's always going to be my lower back that gives out versus with like a compound movement. Sorry, deadlifts are a compound movement, but with a compound movement that is different, with some, carryover being the stones and the tires, there's going to be smaller things that are going to give out on me. So, I really felt it in the upper back and arms yesterday, trying to get the tire in the top position, trying to figure out how to flip it over. There was a lot of lower back at the start, and it's working. Today it's like, oh, okay, my lower back's been worked really thoroughly, but it's definitely not heavily taxed. So, I'm throwing in those sort of exercises which would sort of relate in a way to RPE as well. That RPE for the actual set was probably only a 7. Heart and lungs didn't give out first, which I thought they probably would in terms of conditioning. The tire was just too heavy to get a proper conditioning effect because if I was to go for a fifth rep, it's like, okay, everything's fatigued. I don't know what's actually going to go on me. Am I going to hurt, my arms, or am I just going to get in a weird twisted position, possibly hurt my back? So I had to keep the RPE a lot lower. So yeah, just, being smarter because I'm a stronger athlete. RPE can also work really well, as I stated previously. If you're coming back from an injury, you don't want to re-aggravate something that's sore. Going percentage-wise really means nothing on paper if you're coming back from an exercise and you don't know how, broken or damaged you were previously. Everything should be, done sort of on feel. And the advantage then with the RPE is you might go, okay, the weight was quite light. I'm just going to keep doing more and more reps. So you might, do 20 reps, pump a whole lot of blood into the muscle. In the last few reps, it's like, that's about a 7 to 8. I'm just going to call it there, have a decent break and just repeat. That's a really good way of coming back from injury using a lighter weight. Versus, if you're using set percentages and, you're loading up 70%, you might get to rep 2 or 3 and it feels off and you have to do, 8 reps and you get to rep, 6 and you could get injured again if you're just sticking, with percentages and completely ignoring how your body feels. You might say, why would you ignore how your body feels? Surprisingly, there's a lot of people that do that. They just push through and they don't understand the difference between good pain versus bad pain a lot of the time. Having like a deep burn in the muscle due to like lactic acid, that sort of push through the pain is completely acceptable. You're working hard, but all your structures, the muscle belly, your tendons, your ligaments, everything else is feeling really, really good. So it's like, okay, I'm going to keep pushing because there's a few more reps, even though there's a really strong, deep burn. It's just, lactic acid and everything else. Versus if you're having pain in the actual like insertion or the origin, or something feels, sharp, like a real sharp pain, you don't push through those sort of pains because you just end up getting hurt. The only time I'd sort of train with pain is if I was coming back from an injury and I'm trying to keep the pain to about a 3 to 4 out of 10. So really quite low. And when it's at a 3 or a 4, generally you can keep doing quite a few reps and you're cautious on each rep because something's not quite right. And if the pain scale starts to tick up to a 5, it's like, okay, I'm just going to call a set there, have a decent break and just see how I then feel. If the pain scale's gone back to like a 2 or 3 at the start and slowly works up again to a 4, you've selected the right weight. If you then go straight back into it and it still feels like a 5, it's like, just call a set there. You don't want to injure yourself, further. Chances are just having that little bit of discomfort pushing it from a 4 up to a 5, it's not significant in terms of setbacks. It might be a bit sore for the next day or two, but at least you then know what weight to use, where to cut your reps. You might go, I'm just going to go 5 kilos lighter and continue recovering that way. So RPE in terms of like pain tolerance is really, really good. And it's also really good for experienced athletes as well. That's just my take on it. Other people disagree. Other people, just want to stick to percentages. It completely depends upon the individual. I use, as I said, a mix of the two. And a lot of the people that I coach as well, we use a mix of the two as well. So, if you guys have any questions, feel free to comment below. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. And have a great day wherever you are.